welcome to Palestinapodden and happy International Women's Day. In today's podcast, Nader is unfortunately away traveling, but we have a guest host, Madeleine Schultz. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You are a feminist writer and a board member of the Palestine Committee of Norway, and you were our guest in our last International Women's Day podcast episode, So thank you for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us today's episode is an athlete whose journey has been impressive and inspiring. Valerie Tarazi is a Palestinian-American swimmer who has competed at the highest levels, as in the Arab Games and in the Olympics. She is a 6-time Arab swimming champion and was issued Palestine's National Medal of Honor and Freedom by the Palestinian Authority. She is a member of the Palestinian swim team, national swim team in fact, and represented Palestine in the Olympic Games last year, where she even carried the flag in the opening ceremony. With her dedication and passion for sports, she has broken barriers and inspired future generations of Palestinian athletes. Today, we'll talk to her about her challenges, triumphs, and what it means to represent Palestine in global competitions. And Madeleine, you're actually the one who found out that Valerie was in Oslo.
Yeah, I'm a bit of an Instagram stalker. I follow her on Instagram because I've been a fan since the Olympics, really. Not because I dig swimming or anything, because I really like her as a person. And then I saw on her story that she was probably in Norway. It didn't say Norway, but it looked like Norway. So I was like, hey, are you here? Like a real fangirl. And she answered me. So now she's here.
Yeah. So let's get going with the conversation, shall we? And free Palestine. Thank you so much for being with us, Valerie. You've said in interviews that representing Palestine was like coming back to your roots. Can you tell us what your roots are exactly, and why is it so important for you to represent Palestine?
Yeah, my grandfather was born and raised in Gaza. The Tarazi family has been in Gaza specifically since the year 400. And I recently found out that I come from one of the oldest Christian families in all of Palestine. So the Tarazi family is huge and very well known, I found out. So coming back and representing Palestine, representing the Tarazi family is probably the biggest honor I've ever had in my life. It's so cool.
Can you tell, have you been to Palestine before?
I have. So I've been there twice. I was there in August of 2023, which is crazy to think about because I was right before everything just, went crazy. But that was my first time there, and that was my dad's first time there in probably 40, 50 years. So when we went back, it was so interesting because there's no way to describe when you walk into Jerusalem, you walk into Ramallah, and you're like, this feels like home. And even when I was in Doha last week, being in the Middle East just feels right. Even being, born and raised in America, in Chicago, around that my whole life, Palestine just feels at home. And people don't realize that unless you're Palestinian going back there. It's just a feeling you have. Mm. Yeah.
How were you introduced? Because are both of your parents Palestinian or?
No, just my father. Like I said, my grandfather was born and raised there. My dad is actually one of the few heirs to our property, and just how things worked out. My brother and I are the only ones really with our rights to our house in Gaza.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And so obviously now the last 16 months has been pretty awful. Can you tell us a little bit about what the situation is for your family there now?
Yeah, so I started representing Palestine in 2023. It was in the summer of 23. So, growing up in the States, it was interesting because my grandfather passed away when I was very young. My dad grew up in a household that was half German, half Palestinian. They only spoke English. So I always knew I was Palestinian, but it wasn't necessarily like I grew up in the culture. I always had this feeling that I wanted to represent Palestine, though. It kind of always been in our plan, but who do you get in contact with? Like, who is our family? Because we lost touch with a lot of them. Then I finally got to represent Palestine. It seemed like things were on the up for a while. You know, things were kind of going right, especially in 2023. Went to Palestine, coolest experience of my life, you know, going back home, meeting a lot of my family. And then October 7th hit. And since then, it's been hard in so many ways because I've had family members die, I have teammates die, I've had coaches die. And it's crazy because it seems like people in America are like, oh, well, it doesn't really affect you. Like, you've grown up in America. Like, this doesn't matter. And, like, no, it absolutely does. I know people have died. I know people directly affected by this. And it's hard to deal with because it's almost like there's, like, a lack of support because there's a lack of knowledge. And things are very, very one-sided. But also, you know, through sport, through my platform now and being an Olympian and competing for Palestine and all of these other things, I've had the chance to use my voice and speak on the topic. And again, like, that's the biggest honor that I could ever have, is to be someone that people listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, my question actually is how are you doing actually?
You know, it's a very up and down feeling because, you know, I'm here in Norway. I'm at a Young Leaders Summit. I get to travel. I get to go do really cool things now with this, you know, all these positions I'm in. But there's also that feeling of, how am I the luckiest Palestinian in the whole world? Like, I get to do all of these crazy things, and then you have people stuck in Gaza living in hell, literally living in hell. And it's like, it's almost like a guilt, and I can't, like, I know I can't take it that way, but that's why I take every single interview, every single opportunity I can, because it is my job to speak on their behalf.
For sure.
Yeah.
I feel the same actually, because it's, I always feel that I'm very privileged as a Palestinian, because it's sort of a curse and a blessing to be a Palestinian.
Yeah.
Because I'm so proud to be Palestinian, but at the same time we have this, like, heaviness of our history and the guilt of, like, I'm the lucky one who lives in Norway and I get to do a podcast and work for Palestine, but at the same time it could have been any one of us. It just depends on, like, what happened in 1948 in a way.
Exactly.
Which is so coincidental in sort of who stayed and who left. But yeah, so I totally
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've said this so many times, like, I'm the luckiest Palestinian in the world, and I'm also the unluckiest Palestinian because I can't even go home. And there's that feeling.
That's the thing. Yeah.
It's hard.
I'm sitting here as non-Palestinian, and then I feel like, yeah, you're talking about this survival guilt. That's really what you're talking about, and I see it in my friends that are you and other Palestinians. Is like everywhere, like, fighting so hard to, like, prove themselves.
Yeah.
And it's impressive, but it's also like, yeah, you get a lot of care for it. But Valerie, I want to ask you, because we actually saw you were in Norway, because I just saw you on Instagram. Right. And I saw you were in the fjords, and I was like, she's in Norway. But I want to ask you, like, with the swimming, and just, like, take you back to that, like, can you tell us why you wanted to pursue, like, top level swimming and where it all started?
Yeah, I actually get this question a lot, and I think people are kind of surprised. I started swimming very, very young. But it was something that happened, like, very organically. My parents never pushed me to where I didn't want to do it. So I was always allowed to do whatever sport I wanted. I was very fortunate because I got to do all the sports. I'm a state champion in ice hockey, softball, and swimming.
Oh, wow.
And I picked up track and field too when I was in high school. So I got to do everything, but I always loved swimming. Yes, like, there are hard days and you don't want to do it and you have people there to support you, but it was never forced upon me, which was so nice, because now being 25 years old, past the collegiate swimming phase, I swim because I love swimming and I love competing. But other than that, like theoretically, I don't have to do this at all. But I really, like, I love to do it. And I always said I would swim as long as it's fun. The day it's not fun anymore, there's no point in doing your sport because, like, move on with your life kind of deal. But I'm very fortunate. I love swimming. I have the best coaches in the world. I always say that. I give all the credit to them, and my parents and family support me through it.
As a parent, I'm really impressed by your parents when you told me about all the sports you've done.
I did everything.
But can you tell us a little bit about how you qualified for the Olympics or how you do that and the journey until... Yeah.
It's a little bit complicated because there's two ways you qualify. There's direct qualification and then there's solidarity spots. All based on your world ranking. So it's a little bit complicated, but essentially you have to either go a certain time and every country can send like a certain number of people, or you have developing countries like, there's really only like 20 to 25 countries who directly qualify for swimming. The other 175 countries in the world are solidarity athletes, which is crazy because not a lot of people know that. So Palestine is a solidarity country. We don't have direct qualifiers. We actually did have our first qualifier. He was in Taekwondo, so that's a little bit different. But basically, because I'm the number one female swimmer based on, it's called FINA points. So I swim the 200 individual medley based on the time you're assigned a point number. Well, based on the point number, you're given a world ranking, but it's like kind of minus the people who have already qualified. So then they compare all the solidarity countries to each other, and then they take the top portion of the solidarity countries. So it's a little bit complicated. I was very lucky where pretty much from October of 2023, like I knew I qualified. They don't announce it until like 3 weeks before the Olympics. So it was a long waiting period. But based on your world ranking, based on your FINA points, like I pretty much knew I was going to be in there. So I take one male, one female from solidarity countries to make it simple. But it's all based on world ranking. Like Palestine theoretically could have no swimmers if our world ranking wasn't high enough. So very complicated.
Yeah.
Good job though.
Thank you. I've tried to explain it to like a lot of people, and then you try and read the rules on it and you're like, English.
Yeah, I was sitting just like blank.
It's a little complicated, but...
How was it being there then, representing Palestine for you?
The biggest honor. And I say that because that was my lifelong dream, was to be an Olympian. Since I specifically remember 2008 Olympics. I do remember watching Athens. I was only 4 years old, but I've always loved the Olympics. But going representing Palestine was absolutely the coolest thing I've ever done. And then being the flag bearer. Yeah. I got to be the person on the boat to hold the flag. And
how was that?
Oh my gosh, I still get goosebumps because that was like the highlight of my life. Because one, my personal dream came true. Absolutely. Like I got to swim in the Olympics. I got to be an Olympian. But then when everything was going so wrong in the world, I got to be the person to hold the flag and represent Palestine. And like, it's still the screensaver on my phone. Yeah. Like I look at this like literally every single day. Like this is the coolest thing ever.
It was very... The only reason why I watched the opening of the Olympics was to see you guys on the boat with the Palestinian flag. So it was really... It was so nice to see it as well.
Yeah. The crazy part was 2021 Tokyo. I remember I was like, Dad, like, come on. Like, we got to get my paperwork straightened out. Like, we got to find these documents. It's hard to represent Palestine because... One, you got to prove you're Palestinian. Two, you got to prove this. My grandfather passed away way young. So, you know, all of the stuff. And I was sitting watching the Tokyo Olympics with my dad. And I remember we watched Palestine walk out. And I followed the swimmers. Like, I knew who the swimmers were. And they cut to commercial before they showed Palestine. And I was like, of course, like that makes sense. Yeah. But I was like, Dad, like, come on, like, I could be there. And he's like, you're right. Like, well, you know, we got to figure this out. And he's like, if this is what you want to do. And I'm like, we're trying here, you know? But yeah, I remember watching it and I was like, I'm going to be there next time. And then I got to hold the flag and I was like, the coolest thing ever. Yeah.
And did they cut to commercial this time?
No, they didn't.
Yay!
No, so actually the amount of like love and support and people that watched, and the coolest thing was a lot of the boats passed and like you don't necessarily get to watch the opening when you go down the Seine, but you can pass other boats. Well, when you go past the stands, like they'll like Palestine and they'll announce your country. And we got like a ridiculously loud cheer. And it was the coolest thing. And there were people along the Seine in apartment buildings holding the Palestinian flag. Very few other flags were even flown. And people like lined the Seine holding Palestine flags. And we were like, the love and support we got was not expected. Yeah. Truly. Like we went in like very timid. We're like, all right, everyone brace. So, yeah.
Wow. That's warming to you. Yeah. But can we talk a little bit more about like sports community? And because according to the Palestinian Olympic Committee, over 400 Palestinian athletes, coaches, and sports teachers have been killed since October 7th. Can you say something about like the responsibility of the sports community on speaking up on this issue?
Yeah, it's difficult because, you know, I'm part of the executive board of the Palestinian Olympic Committee now, and I see the facts, I see the pictures. Like I have a ridiculous amount of pictures. We actually got them about 2 weeks ago of the Olympic Committee in Palestine. And it's just simply not there. It's just a sign on the ground. And it's crazy. Like I have all this data. I have specific numbers and stats. And actually next month I'll be going to the UN and presenting the numbers, which is going to be crazy. That's going to be all official names, ID numbers. Like we have it all. We have how many facilities have been done. And it's really hard, like, one, as an administrator to have to deal with that, because how do you even develop sport when that happens? But two, being an athlete and realizing like we have athletes in the West Bank that simply can't even train, let alone Gaza's like, it's not existent. There's no way to even have competitive sports, and it's the saddest thing ever. So like, yes, there is a responsibility. And I always say someone needs to be held accountable. You can't just point fingers at everyone and hope for the best. But also, like, we are representing Palestine, we're representing sport in Palestine, so we have to fight peacefully. And I say that because that's my mission. We want solidarity with the world. We want to make us very humane. We are just people. We are athletes, we are administrators, we're coaches, we're officials. We will present all the numbers and the facts. We have photo evidence, we have video evidence. But the world has to just see it and believe it. And I think that's kind of the hard part, is we're not seeing it. Because, you know, you got all the censorship and everything, and it's just hard to deal with, because it's almost like you have to convince people. You have to like have people buy into this, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like absolutely insane to think about. Yeah.
It's sort of what we see now as well, that all these like reports about genocide, you have to like present a 300-page report or 800-page report, or all these different people that are like saying what's happening, and still not there are mainly two countries that aren't convinced that it's not a genocide is not happening, and you still have to. Well, there's actually more countries when I think about it. Yeah. But the fact that you have all this evidence and you see all the death and destruction, and they're still like, no, we're still gonna like, it's still self-defense, or it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, the photos, the videos I have on my phone are just devastating.
Yeah.
They truly are. And the thing is, the world shouldn't have to see that to be convinced. But, you know, that's why I do podcasts, I take my interviews, I travel, I advocate, I do everything I can. I use my platform, and I do my very best to only give my personal stories in straight facts. I don't even try and point fingers. This is what is happening. This is what has happened to my friends. This is what has happened to my family, to hopefully have people understand that this is like directly affecting people.
Yeah.
Can I ask how that affects you as a sports athlete? Like, obviously you have a lot going on in your mind, and I know that like your mind is also a part of...
Yeah. My coach gave me this compliment fairly recently because, you know, I have a very close group of people. Yes, I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of acquaintances, but my coach, my family, and maybe a few other people in there are the people I rely on. You know, they're the people that I can complain to. I'm not here to complain to the world because I am one of the luckiest Palestinians ever, truly. But that's where my coach told me the other day, he's like, you are really good at compartmentalizing things. I was like, I am? Because he gets all the BS. He just gets all of the, oh my gosh, can you believe this happened? And he takes it and like, he's always been there for me, for sure. And during the Olympics, when things got overwhelming, I actually called him one day. I was like, there are too many interviews and there's this pressure and this and this and this. And he was like, all right, we're going to take 3 steps back here. He's like, tomorrow morning you will wake up and you will swim easy for 30 minutes. You will go get a spa day and you will watch movies. Cancel everything else. He's like, it is okay, Val. You are doing more than enough. And I think just having that and having someone to like lean on in times of that, because my job is not to complain to the world, for sure. But having my small group of people that I can rely on. And the other thing is, when I'm on the pool deck, I am on the pool deck to swim and train. And I think I do a really good job of that. Is like, you have to leave everything at the door. Because if you're focused on 10 other things, it's just, nothing's going to get done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sounds like everyone should have your coach.
Yeah. I have the best coach ever. I do. I say it over and over on every single podcast because I truly like have the best coach in the whole world.
It's nice to hear.
Shout out to your coach.
Yeah.
What do you think about the solidarity in general in the sports world?
Yeah. So we, meaning the 8 other Palestinian athletes, the 8 of us, we went into the Olympics like very timid. We're like, okay, we really don't know what to expect, because I feel like the media, especially in the US, would have you believing that like everyone hates Palestine. And it's so interesting because the loudest voices are the ones heard, not the majority. So we went in and we're like, okay, everyone just like, we're going to do what we need to do. And, you know, we don't like engage, basically. Like, we're just going to stick to ourselves and like do what we need to do. We're just athletes. And the amount of love and support we got at the Olympics was crazy. We had 206 National Olympic Committees at the Olympics, and I would say 200 of them went out of their way to be nice to us, to come up and like, our hearts are with you, we love you, like, how is your family doing, what are you competing in, we are with you, our team is with you. New Zealand women's rugby, we got to celebrate with them after their gold medal. They gave us a jersey. Cool. So we love New Zealand women's rugby. Shout out to them. But yeah, we had an overwhelming amount of support, which was, so nice to have.
At the moment in Norway, we're working towards a boycott against the Israeli football team. Maccabi Tel Aviv were recently here and played in a place called Bodø, which is like up north. And we're working towards boycott and sanctions against the football team, and in sports general. We've seen it with Eurovision and stuff as well. And we've seen that boycotting in culture and sports worked in like breaking the apartheid of South Africa. So do you believe that Israel should be sanctioned?
So I'm not here to be a politician, and I always say that. I am an athlete. I represent, I have a lot of platforms that I represent. And it's not my job to say whether we should or we shouldn't, but there are facts on the table. At the end of the day, athletes are athletes. And I think that's really hard to distinguish whether an athlete should be punished for their government or whether they support their government. And I think that's really difficult to distinguish. But there are clear rules and clear solidarity pacts and peace truces, and you have to follow them. They're rules for a reason, and someone has to be held accountable at some point. Mm-hmm. So I think it's hard to, not put me on the spot, but it's hard to say because there's so many factors that go into it that everyone doesn't see. The closed door conversations, the other facts that go into it. And a lot of people like to compare Russia-Ukraine, which is a completely different situation. There is a completely different situation why they are not able to compete at the Olympics. And why theoretically Israel should not compete at the Olympics. It's two different facts, two different stories, two different sanctions. And a lot of people do not see that, and they don't understand it because you have to go into like the depths of the sports rules and how that works. So it's a lot more complicated than just simply like, here are the rules being broken and good luck. So.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, like, since it's Women's Day soon also.
Yeah.
About, like, more, like, feminist issues as well. But I saw you recently appointed the chair of the Olympic Council of Asia.
Yes.
Yeah.
For gender equity, yes.
Yeah, for gender equity. And can you tell us a bit about what that entails? Like, what?
Yeah, so I actually, I joke about this all the time because I get the weirdest phone calls at 2 a.m. I always have my phone on because of the time difference. And our Olympic Committee president and our technical directors, they love to call me at 2 a.m. Well, I got a phone call at 2 a.m. In October, and it was, yo, Val, you need to be in India next week. And I was like, okay, great. Like, can I call you when I wake up? It's like, yeah, boss wanted to tell me now. Like, you need to know now. And I was like, okay, great. Just send me the itinerary. Like, cool. And next day, I get a phone call. Just kidding. You're not going to India anymore. I was like, okay, thanks. And, okay, so fast forward a week and he's in India and they're like, another 2 a.m. phone call. Val, just so you know, in about 3 hours, they're going to announce that you're chair of gender equity for the Olympic Council of Asia. Just so you know, you are now the chair for gender equity for the Olympic Council of Asia. Congratulations. And I was like, thank you. I was like, okay, great. And I was like, I have no idea what this means.
We know now, or?
Yes, so
okay.
I do. So this was back in October, but it was funny because I was like, okay, like, yes. And they're like, by the way, you're an executive board member too. I was like, what does that mean? It's like, and thank you. What? So basically now with my role for gender equity is our job. I overlook 45 National Olympic Committees in Asia. And our goal is to create more opportunities for women in sports. Whether that be administration, coaches, officials, so on. But we don't want to just throw women in positions because that's not fair, right? Like you can't, and I use swimming as an example. You can't just have a female and like, you're going to be our new swim coach, go. because that's not developing sport. So I actually have a gender equity summit coming up in Brunei in April, and it is with the Secretary General of every Olympic committee in Asia and the chair of the gender equity committee in each country. And our first task is to essentially get your strategy, your policies in place. So what does every country need to do to be successful to create more opportunities for their women in the sporting world? So, for example, there's one country in Europe, and I'm not going to quote this because I don't know what country it was, but I remember hearing about this. Their new policy is every time a team travels, it has to be 30% women, even if it's like a men's football team, meaning you could have athletic trainers, you could have admin, you could have support staff, but your numbers have to be at 30% or they can't travel. That is now the International Olympic Committee's recommendation is 30% women representation. You can't just expect 50% like right off the bat. So we have a lot of things in place where we have coaches and official workshops that we're doing, how to develop coaches, programs where women coaches can go to other countries and learn. We have programs where, understanding why having women in sports is important. And that's kind of our goals, our strategies. I go to 2027, that's my term. And yeah, we're just working, having a lot of workshops in place, a lot of advocates for our sports. And I think that's important. But yeah.
Have you met challenges yourself as a woman, like in sports or?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm very fortunate. I grew up in the US. I trained in the US. I say in a very light sense, we don't have a lot of issues. Like I always played with the boys because I wanted to be the best and the boys were better. So I was going to train with the boys. Not that being said, there were girls there too, but I never had the issue of like, you're a girl, you can't do that. Now let's fast forward to the Olympics. This is one of my favorite stories to tell because I truly I'm so happy this happened because now I truly understand why women specifically in the Middle East have so many challenges in sports. I went to Palestine right before the Olympics to give a speech on behalf of the Palestinian athletes at the French consulate. And afterwards we went to film like a swimming documentary. So I went to the pool, they got some footage of me swimming, like great. And we went downstairs to the gym and they wanted to have this like trainer there for me, like a weight coach. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like this is a video. We don't need, it's just a documentary. And I had the coach that came up to me was like, okay, like you will do overhead press. And I was like, okay. So I just went up to the rack and I grabbed like 30 kilo dumbbells and I put them on my legs and I was like about to do it. And he's like, oh no, like those are too heavy for you. And I was like, first of all, I've been lifting since I was like 14 years old. Like Olympic lifting since I was very young. Like I know what I can do. And I looked at him and I was like, this is very American of me. I was like, repped out like 10 of them. I put them on my legs and he's like, oh no, like your back wasn't touching the seat. Like this, like that wasn't proper. I was like, okay, all right, whatever. Like, whatever. So I was like, this is interesting. So I was just, whatever. And they're like, okay, now, like, what else do you want to do? I was like, I'll do some pull-ups. And like, you can do pull-ups? Like, oh no, I think those are too hard for you. And I was like, okay. Like, so I went to the pull-up bar and I had these cameras like following me around. It's so funny. So I did some pull-ups and they're like, wow, like you can do pull-ups. And I'm like, what? Don't get me wrong, like pull-ups are not easy. Like the stuff I'm doing is not easy, but like, first of all, don't tell me I can't do it. So then we walk over and we go to the squat rack. And this is what got me. Like this was me being pushed over the edge. And this weight coach looks annoyed. And I'm like,
that you can do stuff?
I was like, what is going on? So I was getting annoyed because I was like, who do you think you are? First of all, you know I'm an Olympian. Like, you know I'm going to the Olympics, like, next week.
Yeah.
Like, I'm competing in, like, 1 week. Like, what are we doing here? And he's like, you know, trying to be all cool. Like, oh, classic Arab man. And so I'm like, okay. So we go to the squat rack, and I put on 20 kilos each side, and that's not even what I warm up with. I am simply doing this for a documentary video.
Mm.
Are you sure you can do that? That is a lot of weight.
Oh my God.
I was like, I don't even warm up with this. Like, this is less than my warm-up weight. It's like, I don't know, like, this. I'm like, we're just gonna film this, and, like, I need to get out of here. So when I say, like, if I had problems as a woman, no. Do I understand the barrier that specifically they have in the Middle East with women and all of this stuff and developing women's sports? Yeah, because you have Arab men telling us that we can't do simple tasks.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, like, I really truly understood. And I know there's also, specifically with swimming, like, we have the swimsuits, which is a barrier for sure. And we have women who aren't necessarily comfortable working out in front of men. And I know there's been things put in place where you have women gym hours and men gym hours. And there's so many things we can do to overcome the barriers, to overcome the culture. But I realized the key is, for all of this, is you have to get the high up men to buy into why this is important. And that is what we're really focusing on. But yeah, we have some barriers for sure to overcome.
I wonder how they train the women.
That's why I'm like, if I had someone... Now, me, I'm a 25-year-old American, like, very strong-willed person looking at this guy like, you're an idiot. Like, don't tell me what to do. Can you imagine if I was, like, a 14-year-old girl? Like, well, apparently I'm not good enough to do anything here. So that's why I think it's so interesting, like...
And that really affects you mentally as well, especially at a young age.
Right. And I can't imagine if I was like a 14, 15-year-old girl having that happen, I would probably be like, oh, I guess this is not for me. Instead, I like I said, I'm very fortunate. I was like, you're...
Kind of makes me want to go to the gym and just like...
Yeah, right?
First thing we're doing in Palestine is going to the gym.
Like a tour of gyms.
Yeah. And I tell people that story all the time. They're like, no way. I was like, the thing is, it's not like I was just like some like Palestinian girl going to the gym, you know, like trying to get like a workout. You're filming a documentary about an Olympian. Like, what do you expect?
Yeah.
So I was like, really, I was just like so taken back by the whole thing. But I think it's the funniest thing. I do. Because for it to happen to me, like, I'm so happy it happened to me and not the 14-year-old girl. But yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing this documentary.
It's
I hope the
when will
camera
it be
does
out?
like a Parks and Recreation zoom in on you and with all your reactions.
So part of it actually is on my Instagram, like the clip of it. I don't know whatever happened with it, to be honest with you. There's like a 2-minute video of like, part of me is just talking about my roots, and part of it's like me swimming a little bit, and part of it's me, I was like, I don't know, I was getting bored while they were like in between filming, so part of it, like, you'll see me spinning in a circle like in the water. I was like, and I'm like, why are you putting that in there? Like, I look so bored. Yeah, so that's...
And where are the squats?
The squats are in there.
Oh,
the
really?
Squats are in there. So you'll see I'm like... The weight coach didn't quite make the cut for the video.
No!
I'm sorry, whoever you are, this weight coach, because just know you need to empower women, please.
He's probably some just random uncle from someone's, you know? This is how it works. He's not even a trainer.
Oh, I think he was a trainer at the gym, like, honestly.
Maybe he's the uncle of the owner of the gym.
Yeah, but the funny part is, so that's actually not the gym I go to when I'm in Palestine. It was just like the local thing. The pool was there too, so I was like, I don't know, I just do what I'm told.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the time I just do what I'm told. Just go do this. So when I actually lived in Palestine, I go to El Barrio, and our technical director owns it, and this is the coolest gym I've ever been to. It's like very rustic. You got barbells just like lined up on the floor, and everyone, you could just tell hard work gets done there. So I always say that like that's my favorite gym in the world because it's a boxing gym too. So I get to work out with Wasim, who's our other boxer, and they do like, I don't know, it's just so fun. I love like Palestinians' work ethic is just love it.
Yeah.
Can you also like, because I don't know how it's like in the States and with the solidarity movement for Palestine, but here in Norway, it's a lot of women. It's like, I don't know, every time we have demos and stuff, it's like maybe 80% of the people showing up is women. And I've seen that just like general all around also, like some of the biggest influence accounts also. It's a lot of women in the movement. Do you have like any thoughts about like why that is? Why women are like up front with the solidarity?
That is so interesting because that is just not an observation that I've made.
No.
But now that like you say that, like it does seem that way. I don't know why that is. But maybe women have just been oppressed for so long and we see oppression and we just like
Connect with it.
For sure. And I think that's just so, what an interesting observation. I haven't even thought about that.
I know, you can think about it.
But you know who you know who reached out to me at the Olympics was Bella Hadid's dad.
Really?
Yeah. He's like, we just want to let you know, the whole Hadid family, like, we love you, we support you. And I was like, well, that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
But he obviously posts a lot of stuff on Instagram and they've been really great for advocating for Palestine.
Yeah. So there's some men also.
There are. There are a few other artists too that have reached out to like some pretty famous rappers and stuff. So yeah.
We also saw, but are they Palestinian or are they the ones that have reached out to you?
Yeah,
because that's the thing. Like it's either women
or Palestinian men. Yeah.
So even though,
where are the white men?
Yeah, where are the white men?
Just asking.
But the thing is, I realize this specifically in America, because a lot of my friends, I realize, really are clueless about the conflict. And I mean, even with everything that I've done, I had one of my friends, and I mean, this was one of my closest friends, asked me if I had to serve in the IDF. And I was like,
what?
First of all, completely different country. Second of all, do you know what's going on right now? And I was like, I really was taken back, and I didn't falter. I almost faulted myself. I was like, okay, clearly I haven't explained this well enough. But I realized it's very like lack of information or lack of people wanting to know. Especially in the US, is a lot of time when people speak out, they're not educated enough to speak on the topic. And I found that very, very interesting. But my mind was blown the other day. Just putting that one out there. It's like, wow, that is quite the question.
So this happened like recently?
Like within the last 2 weeks.
Wow. That's like,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that was quite the question to ask. Now there were other things that like led to this point, but I was like, where did this question come from? And like, do you watch my Instagram?
No. Do you go into Instagram? Well, probably algorithms are completely different.
Yeah. My algorithm, like, somehow I'm like, I've been getting like 1,000 likes a picture, and that's like nothing now. So I'm somehow blacklisted and
yeah, me too. Yeah, I've been shadow banned forever.
Yeah, whatever.
I think now that we also have you here as an American, you know, you've had a presidential, shift, to say the least. Why, can you tell us a bit about, like, how is it to be a Palestinian American right now, and how do you see what, like, the things that President Trump is saying now about buying and rebuilding Gaza?
Oh my gosh.
We're gonna own it. It's gonna be great.
Truly tremendous.
Yes, really tremendous. How are your thoughts around this?
It's, like I said, I'm not here to be a politician, but it is very heartbreaking. Because I think about, like, my dream is to go back to Gaza. Like, I would love to even just go see my house, go see my family's church that is in ruins. I would just love to be able to go back, and it's just so sad. Like, the house that has been in my family since 1755, the house standing there, which we found out is still standing, which blows my mind. There's a chance that I just pull those down and just wiped off the face of the earth, and that's just like one little piece of me, and it's just so sad, like how you can try and erase a people or a country or just take something that's just quite frankly not yours. So it's difficult to deal with, and like I said, people know I'm Palestinian for sure, but I do live in a very secluded world. And it's nice to be able, I travel a lot. I'm actually gone far more than I'm even at my university, but it's nice to be able to go back to my university and like have a little bubble where I swim and I have my coach and I have my group of friends and I get like a break from the world. And a lot of people don't get that. But it is very difficult to like read the news and see Al Jazeera all the time, and my feed is just like a living hell. But I don't want to stop looking or stop educating myself. So it's a difficult situation.
Yeah. I think it's also really important that you keep saying that you use your voice and you use every opportunity that you have. And I also think it's particularly important with you as well, because you're a minority that we don't talk about that much, like the Christian Palestinian, you know?
Yeah.
And that is so little talked about, like the that they exist and they're there and they're in Gaza. And you have a house there since 1755. Like, I don't think people realize that, which is crazy that they don't realize that they're Christian Palestinians because Jesus and stuff. But
right?
Yes.
But I think it's so important to talk about that, the background that you have, and your connection to the land as a Palestinian and as a Christian.
Okay, so the thing that people really do not understand, and you can't fault them for not understanding this, is when you go to Palestine, it is like the one place in the world, like the world needs to learn from Palestinians how to get along with other religions, because Christians and Muslims are like this. They live in solidarity, they live in peace, there's a respect. Yes, there's always a case where it's like some extreme something. Yes, that is the world we live in. But from day-to-day life, like going to Jerusalem was actually one of the coolest things that I've ever done. Because you have 3 religions and they just live together. And there's no judgment, and you just live together and live in peace and go about your daily lives. Now, that being said, I am probably the minority of the minority of the minority, because I'm an American Palestinian with roots from Gaza, who's Christian, who is a woman who has a voice. I am the minority of the minority. It's very interesting. And I'm not here to push my religion on anyone. That's not why I say it, but I always make it clear I'm a Christian to show that there are a lot of Christian Palestinians. And if you actually look up Tarazi, the last name, Tarazi, it is like the first thing that pops up is Christian family origins Gaza. And this is like me Googling this like when I was like 14 years old.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but it's very cool how you can just live in solidarity. You can just live peacefully with one another. I was in Albania in December for the Islamic Solidarity Sports Association. And I was with my boss, and every single person we went up to, he's like, "This is Valerie. She is Christian." And I'm like, oh my gosh. 57 Muslim countries. 57. And
look at the Christian.
This is the Christian woman that I brought for you. And I'm like, I Every single time it's like, oh my gosh. But the funny thing is, they literally like, and like, we don't care. Like, great. Glad you brought someone like that's capable. Like, congratulations. Like, it was so funny. I met the Prince of Saudi Arabia when we were there, and he's in charge of sports and everything. And again, this is Valerie Tarazi. She is from Gaza. She is Christian. Like, why do you have to just throw it in there right off the bat? But I think it's very interesting and cool because they don't care. It's not a judgmental thing.
No.
It's not. And it's
I think it's also more to like see we're friends. We get along.
It is. Yeah. And it's so funny to me because my boss will also, he'll be he always goes, you know, she is Merry Christmas. And it is, like, I actually just laugh because it is the funniest thing to me. And he means it in the nicest way, and it's just... Yeah. It makes something, like, lighthearted, but I think the main thing is Palestinians have to be looked at as human, and I think having, like, a Christian representative, like, bridges the gap between the West and the Middle East. Like, being a Palestinian American, like, I can bridge a gap and, like, close something... communicate something in a very American way, but the point is Palestinian, and I think that's a very unique situation to be in.
Yeah.
May I say, I also think it's very important that you're an athlete, because I think like sports and culture have another way of like approaching this issue and another kind of like way of moving stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think it's really important.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you that I ask most of our guests.
Okay.
And that's, what's your favorite thing about Palestine?
The resilience. I think every single person can learn from the resilience of Palestinians. They would rather live in a living hell than give up their land.
Yeah.
That is the most amazing thing in the world. In the attitude. Like I said, I was in Doha last week at the Gaza compound, and every kid that was there was medically evacuated. You had kids with burns and the wackiest scars you've ever seen. Like, and their stories are just horrendous. And these were the happiest little kids in the world. Just running around and playing sports. And through everything that they've been through, all the trauma, they are like truly the biggest inspiration. That was like the most heart-fulfilling experience that I have ever done. And Generation Amazing is it's a UNESCO-funded program, and it's just best thing that they've ever done.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Happy Women's Day.
Thank you.
And good luck with everything. We're rooting for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.